welcome everybody. Thank you, Sundarya and Skip, for calling in from the airport to meet quorum today. We have not a very big agenda, but we're going to go over some consent items. We're going to flip the agenda for Clay to come on top. So he's going to talk to us about state and local planning, specifically to approve some local plan modifications. And then talk about the strategic plan, and Jessica Howard will be presenting her thoughts on Workforce Bell. So moving on with the consent agenda items, let's go directly to Clay for state and local planning. Clay, it's all yours.
Thank you, Venkat. And I see Aaliyah's pulled up the presentation, so I will let her drive. And thank you all. Move quickly as we go through this. Aaliyah, you can go ahead and move to the next slide. So the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act requires planning at both the state and local level. It requires it on a 4-year cadence with a required midpoint modification. So really it's a 2-year cadence. The midpoint modification for the state plan is currently being reviewed by Department of Labor. The midpoint modification for local plans has been reviewed by WTDB staff over the last couple of months. And we're bringing 8 of the 9 plans to you today. The WIOA requires this midpoint modification if there are specific items that are identified. And 1 second, I'm just going to touch on those briefly. The items that are required in WIOA are if there are significant labor market changes, if the financing for the board significantly changes, if the local board structure significantly changes, all of these are significantly changes, strategies, or any other sort of significant change that might occur. Most of the time, local boards historically have not submitted modifications because they have made the determination that whatever changes might have occurred over that 2-year period, they weren't significant enough to require a modification. Oregon can require a modification separate from WIOA if we want to. Historically, we haven't. However, this year we did. We asked, the WTDB had approved a new strategic plan, and we asked all of the local boards to, if they had no other modification, to at least respond with some language that would address how they are going to align with the strategic plan. And so, as I said, 8 of the 9 local boards submitted on time. 1 board is delayed, Eastern Oregon Workforce Board. As some of you might be aware, they've had a change in leadership, and so they needed a little bit of extra time to complete the local plan modification. Next slide, please. So all of the submissions were reviewed, and all of them were determined to have met the requirements of the local plan modification process. Some of the highlights of how local boards identified their connection to the WTDB strategic plan were around alignment, equity, accountability, business engagement, access and visibility. These were all issues that were highlighted in different ways by the local boards. And at the bottom, there's a local plan modification link if you wanted to take a look at the plans themselves. So next slide. So before the recommended action, any questions?
So Clay, the modification here is that one local workforce board submitted its plan late. Therefore, we're trying, it's a timeline accommodation, or is it more than that in terms of the modification?
it's not a concern in terms of some sort of deficiency. It is a timeline concern. The new director came on board and was not able to get the plan completed in the time that was required, and has asked for additional time to submit that. I expect that we'll have that plan in August or September for approval as soon as they can complete their public comment process on the modification.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, next slide. This is a kind of complicated recommended action, but I think if somebody wants to make it, staff would recommend that the WTDB approve the 2026 midpoint modifications for all of the local boards identified. And this was part of the public record. And so I think if you shorten the motion to the boards identified, that would be acceptable.
So, Clay, these are 8 I see here. So the 9th one is the one that's delayed. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So the action that you're recommending is for the board to approve the local plans for these 8 currently?
Yes. Yes.
So moved. This is Kim.
Thank you, Kim. Any
I'll
second?
second. This is Josh.
Thank you, Josh. Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries. And then looks like Clay, for the 9th one, you said August, is that right?
Venkat,
August.
I think we have to vote.
Okay, yes, all right. And then the, so the 9th one is August when? So I make a note here.
Currently, I'm anticipating that it'll either be ready for the August executive committee meeting, or if it misses that, it would be available for the September WTDB meeting.
Right. So, so in order for a vote, Kim, so should I say all in favor, say yes?
Yeah, that'll work.
That'd be perfect.
Okay, and looks like there was nobody opposed. Anyone abstaining? That motion carries. Thank you, Clay.
Thank you.
And looks like I have another motion here, which is an action item to review and approve minutes from the May committee meeting. And so, Aaliyah, if you don't mind, could you scroll through the May meeting minutes? So I'd like to ask for a motion to review and approve the minutes from the May committee meeting.
So
Andrew
moved.
moves. Also,
Who was the move and who was the second for Aaliyah's notes?
Let's
Kim
say
and
Andrew moved and Kim seconded.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Okay. All in, okay, anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? All right, that motion carries as well. Thank you. Thank you for approving the action items. So we're done with the consent agenda action items. So if Skip and Sundarya, you want to drop off, that's fine with me, or you're most welcome to stay on. All right, so the next.
Thank you, Venkat.
Thank you, Sundarya, for attending. And then the next item on the agenda is the WTDB strategic plan. So just for some quick background, and then I'll toss it over to Todd. Todd and I met, and we felt that in line of the in light of the initiatives that I had proposed, and I sent a mail earlier this week, or probably over the weekend, in light of the initiative that I proposed for the Workforce and Talent Development Board around being the unified workforce convener, and secondly, aligning the industry demand to our talent supply pipeline and identifying the gaps and focusing on closing those gaps. And then the last one was activating legislative partnerships. We felt that it was a good opportunity to revise the strategic plan, particularly around these initiatives and also around the metrics, since we're going to be focusing a lot on we're going to empowering a lot of the agencies to be able to track their own metrics. It felt reasonable to trim down the number of metrics that the board focuses on. And so to that end, there was a revision proposed to the strategic plan and also the metrics. And Aliyah, I believe, has a table, like a before and after table. In my email, I think I'd sent out both the original version of the plan and the modifications that we're proposing. But I wanted to take the opportunity to get some feedback from those who've already looked at it. I think this has already been shared with many of you. And Todd, I'd like you to add some additional context that I may have missed in my summary. So if you don't mind filling in the blanks for people on the call.
Sure, Venkat, thank you. Yeah, I think that you did a great job in terms of summarizing and providing context leading up to where we are now. And hopefully you all had an opportunity to see the email that Venkat sent out with the suggested revisions along with the existing strategic plan. And as many of you, if not all of you, probably know, several years ago, you all voted to allowed or afford the opportunity for the strategic plan to be a living document. So when need dictated, it could be updated. So we had years ago, believe it or not, the strategic plan, I think, is before my time, was a 10-year document. Then it went to a 5-year document, and now it's a 2-year document. So we've, in the spirit of continuous improvement, I guess, got down to where it is a living document, and as need dictates, it can be revised. So as you can see here, this table sort of summarizes for you the changes that Venkat shared with me, and I captured that day I met him, as he mentioned. And so I think the goal here today is to work through it, not line by line, but just generally try to capture any thoughts and feedback, input that you all might have. I reached out to several of you to have individual conversations so that you could be sort of briefed and have time to think about this before the meeting. Some of you I wasn't able to reach out to and chat with, but that generally my take on all of those that I met with was that you were pretty encouraged by what you saw, and the feedback was generally positive. So once we sort of work through it today, again, not line by line, but maybe we'll go page by page and ask for reflections or input. That input or suggestions that you give, I'll try to capture, and Aliyah will back me up, I'm sure. And then Venkat and I will get back together and include those comments and the feedback, and then come back to, if necessary, bring it back to the August Executive Committee meeting for another opportunity for discussions. And then either way, whether we bring it back or that's not needed, it will go, the plan is to take it to the September WTDB meeting and have it presented there, likely by Venkat and Skip, and then vote to occur to approve. So anything I left out there, Venkat?
No, I think that was the part of the metrics. We had trimmed those down. If that might be helpful for members to see the recommendations for trimming down those metrics. I don't know if that's something Aliyah has ready to share.
Just Venkat, before we do that, can we just toss it out there for people?
Yeah,
there were,
certainly.
As you saw in the email that Venkat sent out, there were some changes in the vision, the mission, and the reputation in terms of results. Really, the only thing that changed there, if you notice, was results oriented as opposed to results. Reputation, the language changed a bit, as did boldness in vision and action for shared values in agreements. We were just interested to hear if you all were good with that, or if you had comments and suggestions about the proposed language.
Are we talking about the vision and the mission statement,
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Okay. I have some thoughts, and I don't know where I totally stand on it, but on the vision statement, and I'm sorry, I'm driving, so I couldn't put my hand up. I apologize if I cut somebody off or interrupted. But on the vision statement, I think when I read it, I kind of get a little bit caught up with the opportunity word. And part of it is
We lost you, Josh.
kind of think that, did I lose you guys?
Yes, you're breaking
Can you
up,
hear me?
but you came back towards the end.
Okay.
So try again.
Okay. And the other side of that is I feel like there needs to be, more opportunity or better opportunity. And so I don't know how to capture that or how that would play out in the vision itself, but those are the things that I kind of think about from a labor perspective as I think about the change to the vision statement there. And then, on the mission statement, I think that's the next box in the strategic plan. It looked to me like the only word removed was inclusive. And I just feel like we are, always trying to be inclusive or more inclusive. And so if that's the only change, I just don't think it's necessary to take that out. And that's kind of my thoughts on those two pieces there.
Okay. All right, thank you, Josh. I think the reason was we already had inclusive down in a section, probably, reputation. I see that. Okay. So I missed your point about opportunity, Josh, if you don't mind repeating that, because you dropped out, and then when you came back, we missed,
Yeah, sorry
or
about
at least
that.
I missed that. Yeah.
Yeah, so what I was saying is when I first read it, the thing I thought was missing around the opportunity is a word like equal or equitable opportunity. But then the flip side of that is I think if there's something like that, maybe that takes away from the having an increased opportunity. And what I mean by that is having more programs, better programs that are more career pathways and things like that. So the opportunity that people would actually want to do. And so I don't know how that would all kind of land out in the vision statement, but those are things that as I read it, that I was kind of thinking about from that kind of opportunity standpoint.
Okay.
So, Josh, like the words more opportunity or increased opportunity, is that what I hear you saying?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if that's, I think the quality of the opportunity is really what I'm trying to drive at. I'm not saying it very well, but that's kind of how I think of it a little bit more.
Okay, thank you.
We have Steve's got his hand up.
Yeah, what is the where is the data metrics mentioned in this document? Or is it in here?
Couldn't hear Steve very well. Did you
Steve,
pick
we
that
can't
up?
hear you.
You can't hear me? Okay. Let me switch. I gotta switch. I'll get back to you.
Okay. The volume is a little low, Steve. Any other comments? Andrew?
Thanks. I'd add in the vision statement, the term personal agency might not be something everyone who's reading this would clearly understand exactly what is meant by that. I don't know if there's a different phrase that can express the same thing that's meant to express.
Yeah, so I tie this back to human skills and making sure everybody can reach their human potential. So you know how we focused on the employability skills and those human skills that we keep talking about, and this is where the human agency aspect comes in. So that was the thought behind it, but I'm happy to clarify this or make it a little bit more easy to understand if you have suggestions.
I can think about it. I think the thought is a good one. It's maybe just the words aren't something like everyone would understand what the thought then is.
Steve, are you back?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Much better.
Okay, so the mention of the data metrics, where is that? Is that in this document or is it in another document in terms of the data metrics that we're going to be measuring and who defines the metrics?
Elia or Todd, do you have the metrics before, after? That Steve could look at.
They're in this document, as is everything that was in the current approved strategic plan. So if you go back to that document that you had up, Aaliyah, and scroll down. There you go. You went a little bit too far. They start there. Yeah. You can see page 3 at the bottom of that particular page of the table. It says board metrics on the left section column. And then again, you've got current metrics, of which there are 18, and then Benkat's suggestions, of which all but I think 3 of them were removed.
Okay, that's my question. And back to the opportunity in the language. I think if you just say equal access to opportunity for all, that covers everything, because you still have to define what is opportunity and what is equal. So kind of trying to parse the words really doesn't matter unless you can measure it. So if the statement is just equal access to opportunity for all, then at some point you have to define how you're going to measure equal access to opportunity for all.
Makes sense to me.
Does that work for you, Andrew?
I think so. On the opportunity side, yes.
I think Andrew's point was clarifying the agency.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll try to find a better word, Andrew, but yeah, but I hope you're able to drop the intent of what we were trying to do there, like in terms of potential or making sure everybody lives up to their human potential and the human skills. So from my perspective, the things that that I've been shouting from the rooftops are for our workforce pipeline which starts at K through 12, and at K through 12 we need those foundational reading, math, and science skills, and then for the workforce we need the human skills and then the AI fluency to be able to be successful in this AI-driven economy. So those are some of the things, and then combined with these initiatives of being the unified workforce convener, I want to make sure that the state agencies and the local workforce boards, we rely on some of their metrics rather than track everything at the board level. And And then I'm hopeful that those legislative partnerships will come through. There's been some progress on that I wanted to share. Andrew, with Andrew's one pager, I've been distributing it to anybody who I've spoken to or who's willing to speak with me over the last month or so. So I met Tobias Reed. He's our Secretary of State, and so he asked me how he can help, and so I sent him this one pager, and he sent it to two senators. Sorry, one senator on the Republican side, Senator McLean, and then a representative in the House on the Republican side who was Bosshart Davis. And he gave me their numbers. I've texted them, but I haven't heard back. And when I do, I'll let you all know. And then Travis, who's on our board, he introduced us to Representative Darcy Edwards, if I'm correct with that name. And so hopefully that will come through as well. So these are some threads that we are following, Andrew. And then in addition, I think you had said that you'll talk to the Senate president and see if we can get some legislative partners. So I look forward to that. Okay.
Could we go back to the first page? Aaliyah, could you go? There you go. Since we're here, does anybody have any input, questions, concerns about page 1, reputation on results and inclusive, and or WTB shared values and agreements as it relates to the proposed language change on boldness and vision in action? Okay. Hearing nothing, we'll go on to page 2, Aaliyah, please. And I guess the same question for this page.
Hey, can I go back to page 1? Because I was trying to find the agency part. I think the word, speaking of personal agency, everybody that knows me, I like to use the term motor. So that's another way to define agency. If you've got a motor and a vision as to where you want to go, we want to make sure that we're there to empower you on that journey. So to me, that's what agency means. There are kids that are individuals that are struggling to really see that or have that motor. But what we want to empower those with a motor. So the agency part, I think, is good.
Ilya, you want to go back to page 2? Or was it 3, Todd? Which one were you looking at?
Yeah, this is the right page.
Okay.
I think you can see on that first one listed on page 2 under imperatives. There was feedback that Venkat and I got on system, as many of you have heard for many years. So the suggestion was made to change that word to ecosystem. And then in alignment with Venkat's page 1 changes, I would say you can see slight tweaks to A, B, and C in the proposed language. And then again on, well, Venkat, do you want to share a little bit about just sort of your overall take? There were a few themes that came away from that conversation when we had coffee that day in terms of your take on the current board performance metrics. It might be helpful.
Yeah, I think I spoke to it a little bit earlier, but the idea was to, in partnership with additional agencies, as the unified workforce convener, we want to let the other agencies and boards track their own metrics. And so I want to avoid duplication to the extent possible, just to make it more efficient. And then the proposed language is really trying to tighten up things, specifically, for example, if you look at B, this should map well, number 2B, it should map well with our second initiative for the board, which was the high demand sectors and then the talent supply demand gap closure. So that's really the overall context behind the suggested changes, mostly to tighten it up and reduce duplication and better efficiency. Does that help, Todd?
Yeah, thank you. If there's no input or comments, we can go to the next page, Aaliyah. So this one, of course, shows similar to what the last one showed in terms of metrics, the removal of those listed. I think another theme that came up when Venkat and I were meeting was that some of these were, although I'll say, HEC and staff in OE, thanks to Julia and Miranda, were afforded the opportunity, I'll say, to help WTDB staff and myself track progress on these metrics. And we too found what Venkat mentioned was that some of these were hard to measure. And also, when Venkat and I chatted, he asked me several times, sort of after, more than a year has gone by, it makes me sort of wonder why we actually had these. So, for example, number of partner agencies, in addition to Workforce Oregon and HEC, aligning with their priority populations or sectors. Myself and Jen Denning, who's staff in Julia's shop, or in Julia's previous shop as she moves into her new role, met several times and worked through as much of that as we could, did a bunch of research and outreach, and thought that was pretty hard to capture. Of course, there are 13 different programs within the WorkSource Oregon definition approved by y'all. And, we thought and felt pretty comfortable that was a count, as well as HEC, obviously. That's why it says addition to WorkSource Oregon and HEC. But we did think and feel as we did that, just generally speaking, there were so many to potentially count. But I mean, at the same time, felt pretty good about it. I think one of the other things that surfaced when Venkat and I were chatting around that second one there, C, biannual briefing note, what to know about Oregonian success in work, promising innovation, persistent issues, recommendations. I think there was this sort of sense, Venkat, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of your go-to deliverables as the WTDB and the various committees is the production of a report based on research and information gathering to address some of these things. And to your point that you just made, Venkat, about duplication and recurring sort of topics and subjects, you thought it might be good to pull back on some of that. And so maybe there was an opportunity here to do that as well. The third one there, actually the fourth one, number 5, the take-up rate on promising innovations and newly funded initiatives. Again, Jen and I had sort of difficulty in trying to measure that. Although, as some of you remember, we created the decision action tool, I think it's about a year ago, and started vetting that with folks. The tool is there, but being able to, under the sort of current reality of the WTDB, its roles and responsibilities, and the current economic conditions we find ourselves in Oregon, and how that translates to revenue and revenue forecast and directives from the governor around no new funding. It's kind of hard, again, to calculate a take-up rate on newly funded initiatives or promising innovations, because it's pretty much on hold, if that makes sense. Anything to add there, Venkat?
Oh, Todd. Thanks for the context.
Aaliyah, could you go to the next page? So, Venkat, the first one is where you tweak the language a bit to be more action oriented and to say send an official invite to the governor. So that's the only change there. And the other three show removal of those metrics. I will say, Venkat, number 7, Julia made the suggestion a while back that the metrics task force idea, again, in the spirit, I think, of continuous improvement, efficiency, and not being redundant, made the recommendation that that body of work be incorporated into the continuous improvement committee. So that's why that's removed.
And then on the first one, the official invite to the governor. So we've filled out a request, and it required quite a bit of information, but Todd was helpful in doing that to send it to the governor's office. We invite her to our December board meeting so she can attend and share some of her thoughts and priorities, and we have an opportunity to share the board's accomplishments during the year. Haven't heard back yet, but that invitation is on its way.
Yeah, I think they've actually received the invitation. So yeah, fingers crossed, Venkat. Number 8, you already touched on. Number 9. Another thing that came to light when Venkat and I were chatting was it seemed like a few of these were reports, projects that we were required to do. This one on the Continuous Improvement Committee biennial workforce Oregon assessment every 2 years by statute. And I think one on the next page for the Workforce Readiness Committee. Venkat, you kind of thought that we're already doing these, we're required to do these. Why would we put them here as sort of, they're not like a reach goal. They're just like a checking the box to take credit for something, as opposed to being more of a metric or goal that would move us forward. Next page, Aaliyah.
And also, if there are metrics that absolutely should be here for the board to do in line with our initiatives or what board members think, we can always add those.
Right. So again, Workforce Readiness Committee is there. The commitments of support, we did related to that, get commitments of support and the work that is happening in the Workforce Readiness Committee that Charlie Hopewell and Tom Goodhue co-chair, and they have been included in as commitments in the charter of the Workforce Readiness Committee. So again, I think that could, Venkat, your sense was that could get really big, and then to what end? How did that translate into action? Any comments, questions on this page? Okay, next page. Slight tweaks to the language on the other two governor-specific related performance metrics. I think, just observing and supporting Venkat in the conversations that he's had with Sarah Means, Sarah Foster prior to that, and Julia. I think Venkat's done a really great job in terms of trying to increase the engagement with the governor's office. I don't know, is there anything you'd like to say about those two, Venkat?
Not a whole lot. I mean, I did mention every time we speak to Sarah Means that we want to see more engagement from the governor's office. So far, Sarah has been engaging quite a bit, and I see that even with the Prosperity Council, she was able to get us involved with at least one meeting with that council. I saw the recommendations come out. In the summary, there wasn't much to do with the board, but in the report, there is a mention of the WTDB. So, but I don't know. I would love to hear the governor's opinion on the Prosperity Council report and what she chooses to implement and how the board can be influential in that. I'm hopeful, but it remains to be seen how we can engage better.
All right, let's move on to the next page. So here are the new performance measures that Venkat is proposing around his expectations / initiatives that he spoke to and launched at the March retreat around unified workforce convener. And oh, by the way, you probably remember, and maybe you said this, Venkat, but just to refresh, back in March, Venkat created 3 sort of work groups that were led by individuals. And Andrew Stolfi, for example, led the Activate Legislative Partnerships. Travis Ryman is now leading the talent pipeline to align talent pipeline alignment with industry and employer demand. And then Ken Madden, who couldn't be here today again because he's still dealing with his back and at the doctor, is leading the Unified Workforce Convener. And you asked Venkat asked folks to come back with a handful of recommendations in terms of what needed to be implemented around each of those 3. And so you can see them here. We talked about these at the last WTD meeting at NAMAC in June. So they're simply just listed here. There is a little bit more work to do on number 5. Adrian Bennings, of course, rolled off, and now Jessica Howard has rolled in to represent the community colleges, but Jessica was leading that particular group. And so we had a little bit of a struggle finding somebody that had bandwidth to lead that, but Travis, now that graduation has occurred, does have the time over the summer to engage in that. So Clay is helping him staff that, and we look for them to come back with some recommendations here in pretty short order. Next page, Leah. There's the rest of the number 5, sort of generally speaking right now. Again, that's just after one meeting and they've got some more work to do. I think Andrew's ahead in winning the race in terms of activating legislative partnerships, as Venkat mentioned. A couple of us staff work with him and Sarah Foster to produce a couple of leave behinds that have already, I think, seen positive results in terms of what you described earlier in some of the meetings that you've had. And I think Skip has also been talking to some legislators as well. Oh, the other day I got an email from Rob Wagner's office asking for information. So I thought that was good engagement from them and interest in the work that you were all doing. Venkat, do you want to talk a little bit about number 7 and the sort of strategy there in terms of hopefully providing connectivity with the consortia work that's happening at the HEC, your semiconductor consortia work in the Clean Energy Workforce Coalition, not to mention the construction sector?
Yeah, I'm not involved with all of these. I'm in the technology industry consortia and the semiconductor consortia, right? But then the nice thing that is happening is that all of these consortia have their own strategic plan, their own metrics, and so it didn't make sense for the board to duplicate them. But but I'd like to see the alignment and make sure that whatever their recommendations are, what their metrics are, is available to us on the board. And so that can be part of our biannual reporting that we present from the board's perspective. And just one highlight from the semiconductor consortia. I know some of you probably are aware of the FAST initiative. This is the Future for Advanced Semiconductor Technology. There is a regional innovation engine, and we just learned yesterday, and Skip was on the call earlier today, that Oregon's been awarded a $160 million grant for semiconductor technology. And so there's going to be the first tranche will be 15 million. Then there are some performance metrics tied to it from the NSF. So it's a good thing for Oregon. So that's something I'm aware of that I thought would be worth sharing. And the consortia will still be with the HEC, but I don't see any impediments. As this board moves under the employment department, I still feel like it's a good thing. We can still coordinate with the industry consortia that still lie with the HEC. And I'm involved with technology. I'm sure there are people on the board in the other consortia as well. So we should be able to collaborate well. And I really want to drive the human skills, the AI fluency, the foundational skills across all the consortia as well. I just think it makes sense to broaden that.
Okay, I think there's just one more slide. So there's two more. Oh yeah, the ONA talent dashboard recommended in WTDB a talent assessment. We chatted a little bit about that. Speaking of moving to OED, I've already chatted with some of the folks in the research shop to sort of start the brainstorming around that, how we might be able to leverage existing data and dashboards to sort of begin to think about creating that dashboard. And then the very last one is just to capture the footnotes. As many of you may remember, when we worked with Lindsay Woolsey on the last go around on the metrics, there were those like 3 different themed areas that were attached to every metric. And so that was noted in a footnote on the current strategic plan. And the proposed language by Venkat was just to remove that. So that's pretty much it. Venkat, I guess I would say that if anybody has additional comments or suggestions in the next few days, to please send them to you and copy me. And then, as I previously said, we can get together and you can make suggestions on what future revisions would be, and then we could bring it back to the August meeting. If there aren't any, as I said earlier, we can just get prepared to bring it to the full board meeting in September for a vote to approve.
And Aliyah, I hope you captured feedback from Josh and Steve and Andrew. So we'll go work on that. Okay. If no other questions, then we can move on to the final item in the agenda. And that is workforce spell. So Jessica, all you.
Yes. Thank you so much. I am actually driving, so I'm going to pull over, but I believe that we also have a slide deck. Is that right, Todd?
Yes.
Yeah, we do. I'm glad you're pulling over. And before you start, I think it would be appropriate to congratulate you on your recent appointment by the governor to the WTDB. I know you're excited to be here. Venkat is excited. He told me the other day to have you on the board now. So thank you for being interested and for your excitement and for right off the bat wanting to share some things with the board, Jessica.
Absolutely. It's just it's a great honor to be part of the statewide Workforce Talent Development Board. I am on the local workforce board with the Willamette Workforce Partnership, and that is a great privilege. So to be able to play a role on the state board is just it's wonderful, and I will do my very, very best. Also, I'm incoming chair of Oregon President's Council this year, which is basically the group of presidents over all of the 17 community colleges in Oregon. So I'm hoping that the dual roles will help facilitate sharing of information so that we can make the most of the opportunities in front of us. And so I really appreciate Todd and Venkat the opportunity to actually share just my thoughts around Workforce Pell. This is just it's my comments, but I think that they reflect the community college sector where in terms of where we're at the current moment. And so I'd love to just really briefly give some general comments about Workforce Pell. I'm not sure how familiar all of you are with this legislation, but traditionally Pell grants have been used to enroll in 15-week and longer programs. But starting July 1st of this year, Congress has expanded the Pell Grant program to include Workforce Pell, which funds short-term career-focused training programs that last between 8 and 15 weeks, or 150 to 599 clock hours. And this opens the door for post-secondary students to use their Pell Grants to pay for short-term workforce programs. We've been advocating for this for years, so it's an exciting opportunity. The programs have to align with state-defined high-skill, high-wage, or in-demand occupations, and the federal government has given the governors key authorities around the implementation, including determining which programs qualify. So now I'm at slide 3-ish. In Oregon, the governor has designated the HEC to administer the Workforce Pell policy and approval process. And in preparation for this important change, last month, our state's community colleges put together a one-day Workforce Pell Learning Lab facilitated by national consultants, and it happened to be at Chemeketa, my college. Participation included representatives from the HEC, local and state workforce boards, the Oregon Community College Association, the National Council for Workforce Education, the Ford Foundation, and teams from 16 of our 17 community colleges across the state. So it was quite the gathering. And because community colleges will provide the great majority of Workforce Pell eligible programming nationwide, we just wanted to make sure that Oregon colleges were prepared for the opportunity. As I mentioned before, we've been advocating for years for student aid for short-term career-focused programs. And this Workforce Pell legislation has a lot of restrictions. So it is not all we had hoped for, but it is a potential game changer for adult learners. And it represents one of the largest shifts in federal higher education policy in decades. So despite the restrictions, we are excited about it. Student eligibility, slide 4, just generally for all of you to know, to be eligible for this Workforce Pell expansion of the Pell Grant, a student has to meet the current eligibility requirements to receive a traditional Pell Grant, which is need-based, with some exceptions, including that a student may be eligible for Workforce Pell even if they have already received a bachelor's degree. This is a big change. And this, I think, reflects the understanding that the need to pivot and upskill continues to increase, and Workforce Pell recognizes this even for those who have a bachelor's degree already. The award amount, the exact grant amount, will depend upon an eligible student's financial need and the program that they are attending. For the traditional Pell Grant for the 26-27 school year, grants will range from $740 to $7,395, but the award amounts have the same maximum as traditional Pell, as I just mentioned, but they're prorated based on program length. So because these are short-term programs, the maximum amount is more like $3,980, and that's for the longest type of program within this 15-week window. So now I'd ask that we go to slide 5. This is the program eligibility piece, and this is where the states play a key role in defining the terms high skill, high wage, in demand, and how they link together. And fast forward just to the current moment. Last week, the proposed state framework for workforce Pell in Oregon was released by the HEC, and the public is invited to provide comment by this Friday, the 17th. And you do it by emailing the address that I think is on the slide. Or no, I'm going to put it's on the very last slide. I will have included that. So here's where we get a little bit more detailed. And the federal language around program eligibility states that learners can only use workforce Pell Grants for programs offered by an accredited Title IV eligible institution of higher education that are aligned with requirements of high skill, high wage, or in-demand industry sectors or occupations. And then there are all of these other criteria as well: meet the hiring requirements of employers, are stackable and portable, lead to an industry recognized credential, are greater than or equal to 150 clock hours but less than 600 clock hours, are greater than or equal to 8 weeks but less than 15 weeks, are offered and meet other eligibility requirements for at least 1 year prior to application, have a completion rate greater than or equal to 70% within 150% of the normal completion time, have a job placement rate greater than or equal to 70% 180 days after completion. And I'm reading all these so we can all get a really good sense of all these parameters. And then finally, have a program cost that is less than or equal to value-added earnings. And value-added earnings is defined as the median earnings of program completers minus 150% of the federal poverty line. So you can see that there's a lot of parameters here. Now, if you go to slide 6, concerning the first program eligibility requirement, which is that programs must be aligned with the requirements of high skill, high wage, or in-demand industry sectors or occupations, Oregon's draft policy indicates that the HEC is using the Oregon Employment Department's existing definitions of these three terms, either as is or with an exception added. And then if you look at the in-demand occupation term, that's also being drawn from that Oregon Employment Department definition. But it's in how these terms come together that I think the community colleges are going to provide some recommendations or some suggestions. Putting these three definitions together, high skill, high wage, and in demand, with the "and" word there, that makes Oregon's proposed policy more restrictive than that provided in the final federal regulations, which state that the program eligibility must be aligned with requirements of high skill, high wage, or in demand industry sectors or occupations. So the state's draft policy uses the word "and" rather than "or," and then it adds an exception, and hopefully you can see this on the slide, which talks about credentials that prepare students for an occupation that is critical to an in-demand industry sector. But if you notice, if you have the word "or" in there, that exception is not, it's that just create, that opens up the options as opposed to putting in the restrictions. So the exception language, now that's probably not, don't need to talk about that. Let's go to slide 7. So Oregon's draft policy has opted for the "and" instead of the "or," and this is something that community colleges are going to be providing input about because this is already a very restrictive policy, and this, we're afraid, is going to, it's going to have an impact on eligibility. It's going to have an impact on business benefit, on student access, and it's certainly going to carry with it some administrative burden if we have the "and" plus that exception language. that is the biggest piece that Oregon community colleges so far have indicated that I'm aware of that they're going to have an opinion about. A couple others that seem maybe germane to this group I added onto this slide, which is the 1-year requirement and significant change concept. And I'm just reading off the slide. The proposed 30% threshold for determining significant program changes may trigger unnecessary 1-year waiting periods for minor curriculum updates. So here we're talking about delay, right? And this could delay needed industry-aligned revisions and limit Pell eligible students to outdated curriculum. So this is another one of the just sort of recommendations that will be coming forward, because we understand that we're already talking about a 1-year waiting period if all of the criteria are met in terms of offering the program before it's eligible. This is another concern around delays. And then the last one, again, is related to concern for delays, and has to do with a biennial reapproval requirement, and you can read it there, combined with a 1-year minimum before reapplication may not align with these other timelines. And so the concern is that without that alignment, you're basically going to have more delays possible. And so I thought it was a good idea for you all to have a sense of the kind of input that will be coming in from community colleges around the draft proposal. I mean, we think generally, I think it reflects a genuine effort to establish really strong program quality standards and protect the integrity of Workforce Pell. We're just concerned that a couple of these provisions basically sets requirements significantly above the federal baseline that could, again, reduce employer benefit, student access, discourage program innovation, and create some unnecessary administrative burdens that I'm sure are unintended. So I'd love to open it up in case any of you have, I can't see you, so I have no idea if you're even there. I hope you are.
We're here, Jessica. Any
Good.
questions for Jessica? So out of curiosity, Jessica, all these criteria, tracking them to enforce an application meets these criteria, what's the process there and what's the timeline like? And is that automated to some extent, or what's the delay like if a student applies and you make a determination of whether this is approved for Workforce Pell or not?
Well, the approval process is going to be, my understanding is it will work like other approval processes where the HEC is essentially establishing through this policy framework what the criteria are. I'm assuming the HEC will then approve which programs are eligible officially, and we'll have an application process. As far as the student is concerned, because this whole thing started July 1st, any program we believe is eligible to meet all of these criteria would need to be in place by, July 1 of this year, and then a year from then, assuming nothing changes in terms of the length of the program or anything significant that would, and this is one of the concerns we mentioned, then a student could be eligible to utilize Workforce Pell to be in that program a year into the future. So that would be July 1, 2027. They would be applying through the FAFSA to try to get Pell dollars along that usual cycle. But it really means that we're talking about a year if you meet the criteria, and I believe I'm accurate on that.
Okay, that's quite a while.
Yeah, and this is why it's a fairly restrictive program, and I think that there are good reasons for that federally, but we are hoping that Oregon would not make it more restrictive, because certainly when you're talking about outside of the Mid-Willamette Valley, which has these concentrated population centers, things like how you how you can have an in-demand, critical occupation that meets some of these criteria is it's going to be a hard thing to do. And so having the or instead of the and opens the aperture as wide as it can be given the federal guidelines, and allows more programs to allow students to use this funding to attend and apply and complete.
Thank you, Jessica. Any other questions?
Yeah,
go ahead,
Jessica,
Kim.
this is Kim. I was just going to say that I attended the workshop / information session /
Yes, the lab.
enlightenment session that Jessica referred to, and it was great. I mean, it was, of course, we've been hearing all about Workforce Pell in the workforce world at the local level, and trying to figure out how we plug in, how we can support, how we can participate, and it was very informative. And it is I would just echo what Jessica said. It's complex and it is not streamlined. So I would also just think that whatever we can do as a state to sort of make it less complicated and certainly not overcomplicate moving forward will be great.
Thanks, Kim. And, it just seems timely that, we're meeting today and we are within that comment period. So, would encourage people, if they have any thoughts at all, to submit them.
Aaliyah, can you send out to the full board maybe a information on that with the maybe the slides that Jessica just presented, and then a link to the place to go to submit?
On the last slide. Yeah.
It's on the last slide. Okay. And just kind of make it easy for board members to respond.
If you look at the email I sent you this morning, there should be a link directly to Jessica's wonderful PowerPoint. But I'm happy to send it out again because I get you. I lose everything.
That's great. Thank you.
And does that link also include a list of programs that are eligible for Workforce Pell?
The link, well, what I've got on the last slide is the link to the draft policy plan. And then also there is a public website that the HEC's put together. It's great work and it has a lot of information on it. What they're doing in terms of understanding which programs apply. There are so many different certificates and I don't know that there is a single list. And I think that's every single state is scurrying to try to determine what's in and what's out. Obviously, let me see, I'm looking at my notes right here. The talent assessment has been utilized here. So, yeah, I would urge you to go to the website.
Thank you. And Aliyah sent the link, and I think Julia said that we haven't started approving programs yet. So,
right. I mean, that's hence the plan in its draft form.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that, Jessica, and welcome to the board.
Thank you so much. And I just think this is absolutely germane to what the state board is thinking about in terms of how to utilize, in this case, new federal funds to empower students to use that agency we talked about earlier to actually complete credentials that get them right out into the workforce. So thank you.
Thank you. Anything else for Jessica? Any other thoughts, comments, concerns for the meeting today? Okay, hearing none, then 45 minutes everybody gets back. So thank you for coming, and have a good rest of the week.
Thanks,
Venkat.
everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.